Hey guys, welcome to the Story Collider. How is everybody? So, how many people are here at Story Collider for the first time ever? By a round of applause. So that's basically everyone. That's pretty much what I thought, because this is the first show we have ever done west of Michigan. So I'm very excited to be here tonight. Since you are all new to the Story Collider, I will explain to you exactly what we are. The Story Collider was started about 4 years ago by two physicists, Ben and Brian in New York, who both love stories. And they thought, what if we combined our love of science with our love of stories and smashed them together in some kind of awesome Jetsons meets Flintstones, like Pizza Hut, Taco Bell kind of combination. And so that's what they did. I was friends with them at the time. We knew each other through the New York storytelling community. And I thought this was a terrible idea. I thought this is going to be the most boring show ever. No one wants to hear stories about science. I thought it was a huge mistake. I felt bad for them. And they were setting up for their first show, and I thought, oh man, I better go. Just so they have at least one person in the audience, I better show up. So I go there and was very quickly humiliated because it was standing room only, the place was packed, and the stories were amazing and powerful. There were 6 true personal stories about science, and it was so real. And so I went very quickly overnight from feeling bad for them to thinking, how can I get in on this? So here I am today, senior producer of the Story Collider. That is the American dream. So last year, me and Ben from the Story Collider were lucky enough to meet Ronnie Zeiger, founder of Smart Patients, at the TED Med conference in DC. Ronnie was there to give a very dignified and really passionate talk about empowering patients, and Ben and I were there for the free food. So we came very quickly right away. And Ronnie was like, I know some people with some good stories. And we were like, all right, let's do it. And I don't think I realized until he connected me with the 6 storytellers you're going to meet tonight how amazing the stories were going to be. You guys, you are going to hear 6 amazing stories tonight. Are you ready for it? Awesome. All 6 of our storytellers tonight are going to be telling us about their experience with cancer. This is going to be huge. Because Smart Patients, which I think I haven't yet mentioned, is an online community for patients and caregivers where they can kind of learn from each other about their cancer experiences and treatments and clinical trials, and kind of experience all of that together. So we have 6 people from Smart Patients telling their stories tonight. And so I want everybody here to give these storytellers a huge amount of respect because they're going to be telling super personal stories, super powerful stuff. So please silence your cell phones. Don't get too drunk and rowdy. I'm looking at these ladies over here. But at the same time, I want everybody to be comfortable, and I want everybody to know sometimes it's okay to laugh. There are going to be some funny moments in the stories you hear tonight. So with that said, I'm going to introduce our first storyteller. Are you guys ready? Awesome. So our first storyteller is a retired aerospace engineer with MIT and Caltech degrees, and she is now a writer who uses her skills to translate the experience and science of lung cancer treatment and research into language other patients can understand. Please welcome Janet Freeman Daly.
Thank you to Smart Patients and Story Collider for this opportunity. In March 2011, I was healthy, exercising regularly, a bit overweight. But I had this cough that had gone on for a few months. To make my husband happy, I went to see the doctor. 2 months later, I was diagnosed with severe pneumonia and advanced lung cancer at age 55. The doctors kept saying, "I'm so sorry." I didn't know anything about lung cancer. I'd never smoked. I'd never lived with smokers. I never worked in a smoking environment. Lung cancer wasn't even on my radar. Being a recovering nerd, I went online to learn more. And there I saw some sobering facts. Lung cancer is the #1 cancer killer of both men and women. In fact, it's the #2 killer of all kinds in the US. Imagine a jumbo jet crashing and killing everyone on board every single day. That's how many people lung cancer kills in the US alone. The overall 5-year survival rate is only 16%, among the lowest of all cancer types. The majority of patients are dead within a year of diagnosis. What do you do with information like that? Where do you go to learn how to live with lung cancer? Well, my solution was to find an online lung cancer community. I joined with an alias, like many members do, in part because I didn't want my already anxious family to see all the details of my graphic side effects. But there was another reason, which took me a while to understand. Lung cancer carries a stigma. We've all heard that smoking can cause lung cancer, so lung cancer patients are blamed for their disease. Most people don't realize that over 60% of patients diagnosed are either never smokers like me or former smokers who quit years ago. Yet the first question I hear when I tell people if I have lung cancer is, "Did you smoke?" So I had treatment, one of the more aggressive treatments, concurrent chemo and radiation. And I went online to learn about what side effects I could expect. I also found that many people had done well with my treatment, and that those statistics I saw, they apply to a group, not to individuals. I don't have an expiration date stamped anywhere on my body. Talking to other lung cancer patients gave me hope. 2 months after treatment was finished, a scan showed the treatment worked. But I had a new tumor now up by my collarbone. I was now a metastatic lung cancer patient. I was home alone when I got that news. The panic was overwhelming. I felt like I was standing in 30-foot surf that kept knocking me down. It took days to get over that feeling. Some of my online friends told me that I could get tested for more mutations, but I didn't have any of them. So more treatment, more chemo, followed by more radiation. And I read online about other patients' experience and shared some of my own anonymously still. 2 months after treatment ended, the scan showed the treatment had worked. But I had 2 more new tumors, this time in my other lung. My oncologist said I'd be on chemo for the rest of my life. But an online patient told me about a new mutation called ROS1. He said I fit the profile of patients who had this, and he sent me a research paper so I could learn more about it. Next thing I know, I'm flying to Denver to try and enroll in a clinical trial. I remember wondering what the heck I was doing flying 1,000 miles from home to a doctor I didn't know. But the gamble worked. 2 weeks later, I started taking a pill called crizotinib. And 2 months after that, there was no evidence of lung cancer in my body. I had achieved no evidence of disease, or NED, as he's known to cancer patients, for the first time since my diagnosis. I also have chemo brain, so I forget what I'm saying in the middle of sentences. I am not cured. Targeted therapies do not cure, they just suppress the cancer. But I'm pretty lucky. My oncologist says I have a 70% chance of making it to 2016. I am amazingly, deeply grateful to everyone and everything that helped me achieve NED. Medical science, with its research and treatments, insurance that paid for most of my treatments, family and friends who gave me support, a wonderful, extensive online lung cancer community, and the prayers and good wishes that have lifted me up. A second chance at life tends to make one have a different perspective. A splash of color on Mount Rainier, or the sea breeze rustling the Douglas firs can make my whole day. Chatting with my sister over a latte can keep me smiling for a week. A second chance at life also makes one introspective. Why was I spared when so many others with lung cancer die? Why does my mutation have an effective drug when so many don't? Why do I get to see one of the world's best lung cancer doctors when many people can't get good treatment? Why am I still here? What purpose does the universe have for me? Shortly after I started my clinical trial, I went to Starbucks with a friend, Jay Lake, a science fiction writer who has been blogging for years about his metastatic colon cancer. Jay had had a recurrence and was interested in clinical trials. I told Jay about what I'd learned of clinical trials and new research for cancer treatment. And Jay told me about all the responses and comments he gets to his blogs about cancer. He got far more comments on his cancer blogs than he did for his writing, and he'd written a lot. In that meeting, something clicked. Up until that point, I'd only shared my lung cancer journey with family, close friends, and anonymously online. Maybe I could do more. I've been blessed with gifts that helped me get through my lung cancer treatment. In my previous career as an aerospace systems engineer, I was a technical translator of sorts. I could research a technology and then explain it to someone else and show them how it could benefit them. Well, I'd been applying that to my lung cancer. I could understand the science of my disease and my treatments. I could advocate for myself with healthcare professionals. And I could explain what I've learned, both verbally and in writing, in everyday terms. I'd use these skills to help Jay. Maybe I could use them to help lung cancer patients. Most lung cancer patients don't know about the type of treatment that I'm getting. Even some doctors don't know. Lung cancer patients don't need just compassion. They need information. They need hope. Could I provide that hope? It would require going public about my lung cancer. After a lot of soul searching, I realized that I am just a steward of these gifts that got me through my lung cancer. I was meant to use them to help other people. And the best way to do that was to go public. My first step was to open my CaringBridge journal so that anybody could read it. It was only one click, but did I feel exposed? Then I followed Jay's example, and I started blogging. Next, my church asked me to speak, and I spoke about my lung cancer experience. My sister and I teamed up and gave a presentation to chaplains in training to explain how cancer had affected our family. And after that, it was a small step to speaking in public. Going public with my lung cancer has had some great benefits. Patients tell me it's encouraged them to ask more questions and encourages them to see somebody who is living with lung cancer. But it helps more than just patients. Family members tell me it helps them to understand what their loved ones are going through. Chaplains say it's helped them understand what their patients need and feel. Even some doctors have said it helps them understand how patients can be partners in their own care. But perhaps the best is that it's helped a lot of people realize that anyone can get lung cancer, and no one deserves it. I've also had a personal benefit from going public with my lung cancer. When I'm having a day when my brain isn't working right, or I'm gasping because I exercised too hard, I remember that I am helping real people, and I keep going. I'm now a 3-year survivor. I've outlived my prognosis. I'm still on the clinical trial, and I'm still NED. It's an odd life, living from scan to scan every 8 weeks. But I'm satisfied living with lung cancer as a chronic illness, because it means I'm still living. Now that I've found my voice, I help other lung cancer patients find hope. All cancer patients deserve hope. Every one of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. I forgot to mention at the top that tonight's storytellers are here from all over the country. We've been very fortunate to have smart patients raise the money to bring all of them out, which is super exciting. Janet is here from Seattle. Our next guest is here from Wisconsin by way of Boston. Am I right, John? Where are you, John? There he is. This is also, in addition to being our first California Story Collider, this is the first Story Collider we've ever done with comfy couches, and I think I'm going to make it a new standard. I can never do another show without a comfy couch again. All right, so our next storyteller, John Parks, worked in computer operations and systems programming until he retired, and he has been making his own furniture and wood turning for over a decade, which is pretty awesome. Please welcome John Parks.
I was going to say. I was never a big eater. With a desk job, I started gaining a pound a year at age 30, and by 50, I was an uncomfortable 185. Some people are super tasters and can tell you every ingredient that went into making a gourmet meal. I can tell you if I'm eating a hamburger or a hot dog. So I like to add hot sauce to many things, and I use about a gallon a year. In late 1999, I got a bad chest cold that did not want to go away. I went to a doctor in January of 2000, and as swallowing became more difficult, my weight slowly dropped to 157. In April of 2000, I was finally diagnosed with stage 3C esophageal cancer. The diagnosing doctor did not tell me at the time, but he did not expect me to survive 6 months. The tumor was partially blocking both the esophagus and the trachea, with few other symptoms. The change had been slow and painless. Seeing the overall 5-year survival rate of 15% was a shock. But while statistics can accurately tell what will happen with a large group, they say absolutely nothing about the outcome of one individual. Statistics told me I was going to have to try hard to be part of that 15%. I hated that I might not see my high school-age children grow up. Chemo started within 2 weeks. As swallowing got worse, it became apparent that I needed to eat to survive. I started to wonder if I was simply going to starve to death. A month later, when the tumor blocked my esophagus 100%, Surgery was required to install a stomach feeding tube, which is just a tube sticking out from a hole a few inches above your navel. The instructions for using the G-tube ranged from terrible to incorrect. I was given the wrong kind of pump, poor information about what kind of food to use, and not enough calories. The pain and fear of that first weekend could have easily been resolved with just a few words of wisdom from an experienced patient. But it would be another 2 years before I would finally find ACOR and for the first time talk to another EC patient. That memory has a lot to do with why I have remained involved with ACOR and now with SMART patients. For the next 5 months, all food and water was through the feeding tube sticking out of my stomach. 3 cans of Ensure-like food were put in a bag on an IV pole, and the drip was adjusted to take from 45 to 60 minutes per meal. There was no satisfaction to eating. It was just something that had to be done. I thought with such a uniform diet, it should go easily through my system. Instead, it was a constant back and forth battle between constipation and diarrhea. Usually 9 cans of food today, or per day, were enough liquid, but I was working full time. I was trying to do some bicycling, and it was important that I stay hydrated. Normally, a thirsty person can just take a drink of water. It's not so easy with a feeding tube. And even if water is put through the tube, there's no feeling of satisfaction or quenching of thirst. I really missed being able to take a nice drink of cold water. A coffee cup was carried to constantly spit into to prevent drowning in my own saliva. It was disgusting to me, and it must have been even worse to others. But it was what had to be done so that cancer would not make me a prisoner at home in the bathroom. I tried to take one day at a time. If there was something that could be done, I tried to do it. Getting good doctors, getting second opinions, getting nutrition every day, getting exercise. But after that, it was time to put cancer aside and to not worry about it. Worry is usually just a waste of time and energy that does nothing but cause more stress. I was lucky that continuing to work full time helped to occupy my mind. During the middle of 6 months of treatment, my sense of smell got very sensitive and picked up odors on a few other people that smelled like just terrible bad breath. The people had not changed, and they only smelled bad to me. One person was a radiation technician, so I tried to use the other technician or just hold my breath. The other person was my significant other. Fortunately, the feeding tube had me sleeping in a recliner. I would almost gag if I walked into the bedroom after she had been sleeping all night. Since I knew it was not their problem, I had tried not to let the smelly people know. It was a relief when my smell sense returned to normal and the same people no longer had the unusual odor. It made me wonder what a dog smells, what they consider good or bad. I never did get a good explanation of what had happened. Just as eating was getting back to normal, a chronic cough started and kept getting worse until I was standing over the kitchen sink coughing violently for 90 minutes at a time. One evening I started coughing up blood. When my significant other, a nurse, wanted me to go to the emergency room, I said that was for sick people. She finally got me to at least call the doctor. He said, go to the emergency room immediately. Shortly after getting to the ER, they had me in ICU, and I spent my first night in the hospital since birth. A fistula or a hole had developed from the esophagus to the trachea. That means that eating or drinking could let food into the lungs. A big incentive not to eat. A stent was inserted into my esophagus to plug the hole so eating was again possible for a few months. Then the hole got bigger, coughing started again, and another stent was inserted for another few months. What was to be a routine tracheal scoping to look for cancer got exciting when they saw the esophageal stents were about to move out of the esophagus and block the trachea. But breathing is such a good thing. The doctors had no idea what could be done, so they transferred me to a university hospital where they gave me a CT scan that evening. The next morning, a surgeon suggested surgery to repair the trachea and to attempt to repair the esophagus. Since he did not know if the stents would block my airway in 2 minutes or 2 weeks, he said he could start the 8-hour surgery that afternoon. He returned in an hour to see if I wanted to proceed with the surgery, and he kept asking about my children and if they were coming to the hospital. I finally realized that he was trying to tell me that they should come to the hospital because I might not survive the surgery. It gave a whole new meaning to what I had considered the routine cautions they had been telling me about. Their mother got them out of high school and to the hospital. My daughter had turned 18, and I did not want her to have to decide to pull the plug if there had been a problem. So I signed the papers so a sister could decide. I still tried not to worry about problems that had not happened and assumed the surgery would go as planned. When taken off anesthesia the next morning, it was a relief to be alive. But it was still a little scary with all the tubes, wires, and machines connected to me. I could see the shock in people's faces when they saw me. After 2 weeks in the hospital, I was able to eat small amounts of soft food. I got home in time to attend my daughter's high school graduation. A wheelchair got me a front row seat. Coughing started again and got me back in the hospital in less than a week. The same cuts to my back, stomach, and neck were opened again for an esophagectomy. My stomach was now pulled up into my chest, competing with space with my heart and lungs. My right collarbone was cut to make just a little more stomach room. After 2 weeks in the hospital, I was again home, eating soft food. After surgery, it took about 15 months before I could gain any weight, about 2.5 years before the chest pain was only discomfort, and a few more years to get back to eating 3 meals a day. There's always some fear of a recurrence, but that is something I cannot control, and it's back to one day at a time. I can only be sure of being cured of esophageal cancer when I die of something else. It's better to try and enjoy every day. I wish I could bottle up the good luck I had and send it off to other EC patients. No matter what the statistics are, there is always hope. Today, I eat everything in moderation. I take my time eating and enjoy the food while still adding my favorite hot sauce to many things. My taste buds are no better than they were before cancer, but now I am impressed with how wonderful a simple drink of water can taste.
Thank you so much, John. All right, guys, we're going to do one more story, and then we're going to have a brief intermission. and then we're going to come back and we're going to have 3 more amazing stories. So are you guys ready for your third story? All right. Our third storyteller is here from Alabama. She was the first enlisted female in the Air National Guard, serving as a medical corpsman during the Vietnam era, which is pretty cool. And she now works for the U.S. government. Please welcome Rain Phillips.
Thank you. I will. Thank you. So many of us get chemo brain. It helps to have our notes. For the past 15 years, because I'm a disabled veteran, I would always get a letter from the Veterans Administration telling me to come in for my annual physical. And for the last 5 years, my VA doctor would look at me and say, "You have the most boring labs I have ever seen." Well, January of last year, I didn't get my letter. And when February rolled around and I still hadn't gotten my letter, I decided that my VA clinic was probably backlogged. And so rather than bother them, I asked my husband's doctor if he wouldn't mind doing my physical. He said sure and scheduled me for x-rays and labs. Well, I told him the VA had stopped doing x-rays years ago because I've never smoked and no one in my family has any lung issues. But he told me that he just always does a chest x-ray, and so I just said fine. It was a Saturday morning. It was overcast. I drove to the lab to have my test done, and I wasn't worried because it was a routine physical. I mean, it's called routine, so I wasn't expecting anything. The following Monday morning, the phone rang, and he called me to say he wanted me to go to my local hospital to have a scan done. There was this shady something in my lungs. Didn't worry about it, went and got the test, was on the drive home when he called back. And he said, "I'd like you to go and get an abdominal scan. Seems you moved in the machine and maybe we saw something." Didn't worry about it, went and got the scan. And then he called and said, "I want you to come to my office right now." So I did. And he said, "You know, that abdominal scan showed us something, and I'd like you to see a specialist." So I said, "Okay." He said, "I want to send you to an oncologist." I went, "Okay." You would think because I'd been a medic, I would have connected the word oncologist with cancer. Didn't even dawn on me. So my adult daughter went with me, and we went to the very first oncologist he could find. And when we were sitting in the office, the doctor walked in, didn't even introduce himself, and said, "You have kidney cancer." And I went, "Are you sure? Maybe it's something else." And I started listing different things. I don't clean my CPAP machine, maybe it's dust, and just went through, and he just stopped me. And he said, "You know what we call what you're doing? Rationalizing." And I said, "Well, of course I'm rationalizing. I heard what you said, and I don't like it one bit. How do you know it's not some of this other stuff?" And he said, "Well, I'm the doctor, and I just know. And you just have to do what I say." Well, I decided I didn't like him, and I didn't like his diagnosis. So I gathered my scans and my labs, and I drove to my VA clinic, and I showed my regular doctor. And he looked at it, and he said, "It does kind of look like kidney cancer." And I said, "Well, you know, our hospital's 2 hours away one way. Is there any place closer that you would recommend?" And he said, "Well, yeah, we do have a local cancer center, and it's very good." So he made me an appointment, and a couple days later, I'm at my new oncologist, and they ran more scans and more tests, and he said, "Yes, you do have kidney cancer, and it's big, and it's pushing up into your heart and lungs." And so I thought, what a pushy. So we named him Wallowitz, after this favorite pushy character on one of my favorite TV shows, and it was decided that he had to be removed. Now, I know that when some people hear that they have cancer, they're devastated. But when he told me I had cancer, it didn't bother me at all. I mean, I know cancer survivors. You see them on the TV all the time. they're running races, they're doing just fine. But then I learned that not all cancer is the same, and cancer comes in stages. And not all cancer patients become cancer-free because of treatments. So we decided to go ahead and do the surgery. And what should have taken 1 day and about 5-day hospital stay turned into a 2-day surgery, and I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. And after the second week, I was begging to go home, and I told them if they didn't let me go home, I was going to repaint the place and hang new wallpaper. Excuse me. Now, when they told me that I had the cancer, and they told me, and they explained to me about how it was in my lungs, I didn't understand that. And they explained that because it was kidney cancer, I now had kidney cancer in my lungs. And I thought, who ever heard of that? It made no sense to me. But because I do have kidney cancer in my lungs, I have stage 4 cancer. Now, I wasn't upset when I was told that I had cancer, but when my HR department was notified, they were told I was terminal. Now, when I heard the word terminal, then I became terrified. I thought that that meant that I would drop dead within a month or so. And I worried. I have a husband that's disabled and who's housebound. And I worried, well, who's going to take care of him when I'm gone? How's he going to buy groceries? How's he going to pay the bills? And I have a daughter, and she's in the medical field, and I thought, what is my end of life going to be like? Am I going to become a burden to her? I have a son in college. Is he going to get so depressed when I drop dead that he may not finish? I have a friend online who told me that worrying is like a rocking chair. You're moving, but you're not getting anywhere. But still, it was hard. One of the things I think cancer patients do when they first hear they have cancer is they immediately research everything they can find out about it. I know I did. Immediately started reading every book I could find, started scouring the internet, but I learned real quickly that a lot of books have absolutely no basis on science, and you can't believe everything you read on the internet. But most cancer patients feel they want to do something. They want to do something more. I know that I did. I mean, we're doing what our doctor's telling us, but we want to do something personal, something to help ourselves. A lot of people will start taking vitamins, they'll take supplements, they'll go on different diets. I know for me, I eat Lucky Charms cereal. They're magically delicious, and I figure I need all the magic that I can get. One of the other things that I do is, well, let me go back 1 second. The treatment that I am on is similar to a lot of patients that have kidney cancer. I take an oral chemo. And oral chemo has a lot of the same side effects as other chemos. I know when mine gets really, really bad, I'm about bedridden. And so it can be very difficult to deal with. And so one of the things that I do is something that's called guided imagery. And that's sort of where you talk to yourself in your body. And a lot of people may laugh at this and think it sounds really funny, but I figure it doesn't hurt, it doesn't cost anything, so that's what I do. And because I was a medic, my guided imagery is set in a combat zone. When I go to bed at night, I close my eyes, and I picture a deep jungle. And I think to myself, Wally was in that jungle hiding, was hiding in my kidney, and he was waiting to kill me. But my medical team came in and they got rid of him. But before they did, he sent 5 metastases to my lungs. And my own troops can't kill them, my own immune-fighting cells. So my doctor gives me the oral chemo. But sometimes I get so tired, and they just have to give you a break. And during that break, I kind of give my cells a pep talk. I tell them, we can do this. The oral chemo's coming. And pretty soon we'll be back in the battle again. Now I get scans, that's what I consider my intel, every 3 months, and it tells us how the chemo is, how the cancer is doing, and whether we have it under control. And so to me, my cancer fight is a battle, a very real battle. And it doesn't just affect me. It affects the people that I love, the people that I care about. I'm on the Smart Patient webpage, and I have online friends, and we all talk about and we revel in our victories, and we cry in the bad times. And these things affects them. They don't even know, but I can tell that they care. And I care about them, so it affects so many people. It affects my coworkers. I mean, I'm still trying to work. One of the things I remember in school was they talked about there's the 100-Year War. And so I realized that not all battles are won in a day. Some battles can last a very long time. And my battle may not last 100 years, but I'm going to fight it for as long as I can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rain. All right, we're gonna take about a 10-minute break. The restroom out here, there is only a men's room, but women can use it too. Don't worry, it is a one person at a time bathroom. It's just down the hall to the right. So everybody, take a break. Let's compose ourselves. We'll come back for 3 more stories. It's gonna be amazing. I'll see you guys soon. While you guys are sitting down, I will just let you know a few things about Story Collider. Story Collider has a podcast, so you can listen to more awesome stories like these from the comfort of your own home. In fact, we have about 4 years worth of a back catalog that you can check out on our website, storycollider.org, of like 200 stories. So if you have a lot of dishes to do or a long car trip ahead of you, Story Collider is here for you. Also, you can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and all of that other kind of stuff that makes us happy. On our website, you can subscribe to our newsletter. If you don't like it, you can always unsubscribe, as my brother-in-law did a few months ago. I promise not to take it personally, as long as you're not a close relative I have to see on holidays. My favorite part was he tried to deny it. He said, well, it must be another Alex Jordan. And I said, another Alex Jordan with your same email address? That's amazing. It was a really awkward Christmas dinner. So are you guys ready for the second half? All right. Awesome. Our next storyteller is maybe the sweetest person in the world. I don't know, maybe. She has asked me not to refer to her as a cancer victim, survivor, warrior, or victor. So I think I'll just say she's the nicest person ever. She's at smartpatients.com after 14 years at acor.org. Please welcome Stephanie Sugars. Are you standing or sitting?
I'm going to stand. For as long as I can remember, I've been preparing for death. I was born into death. Before I could speak, my guts were blocked by a polyp the size of my adult fist. While still a baby, a life-saving surgery nearly killed me, leaving me with lasting memories of death, a peaceful place of wholeness, love, and belonging, much more pleasant than my ill and pained body. I left the experience feeling that if I could just live a good life, I'd earn a good death. Heaven's gates would open and angels would clasp me to their bosoms. I'd be home again. That polyp was the first sign of my rare genetic disorder, Peutz-Jeghers syndrome. At age 16, after many years of illness, I got the official diagnosis. But even with a name, there are still limited medical treatments for the innumerable benign and malignant growths throughout my body. I'm the only one in my family with the disorder. I have a new mutation. And because I was sterilized in my late teens, I didn't pass this mutation on to anyone else. I felt alone in my family and alone in the medical world, because the best medical experts had seldom seen anyone else with this disease and knew nothing about living well with it. I was on my own. It was up to me to create the healthiest possible life for myself. Being ill for many years, I never had a high-paying salary, and for many years I didn't have medical insurance. Instead, I relied on self-help, low-cost, accessible, health-promoting measures. Medical PTSD kept me from necessary medical care at times, and I distrusted doctors who expected to be all-powerful authority figures. Fortunately, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area with complementary and alternative healers of every stripe. I've worked with healers using traditional and modern Japanese, Chinese, Tibetan, Burmese, Indian, Eastern Europe, Indian, and Native American Indian, Western, and earth-based medical models. I've tried diets ranging from whole foods to macrobiotic to vegan and raw. I've ingested flower essences, homeopathic remedies, herbs, concoctions, and decoctions. I've twisted myself into yoga poses, qigong flows, and healing clothes. I've been under the loving hands of dozens of body workers and energy workers, and I practice self-help reflexology, Reiki, Jinshin Jitsu, and acupressure. I've meditated for years and engaged mind-body medicine since before mindfulness-based medicine was even invented. In short, I've been willing to try anything that might help and won't hurt my body, being, or pocketbook. My breast cancer diagnosis at age 34 came as a huge relief. Instead of relying primarily on myself and the healing methods I'd integrated into my daily life, or medical help from textbooks and medical journals, I could join thousands of other women seeking solutions to my medical problem. I was told that if I had both breasts removed, my chance of cancer recurrence would be lowered to 1%. I've never been offered such good odds before. I did it. I first encountered my naked, breastless body in a cold bathtub, the water below my waist to protect my new steri-strip scars and 2 drains. I wailed into the cold, white room. My then partner and our visiting friend came running in response to my cries. My tears fell into the bathwater. I'd given my breast to cancer, to the surgeon's knife, and was left mutilated. I lost my pretty, sensitive, sexually responsive breasts. Breasts that never knew a full day in a bra. Breasts with perky nipples that rose in the chill wind or in sexual desire. Breasts that swelled and ached and flexed with my menstrual flow. Breasts that fit so neatly into clothes. A huge sacrifice, but worth it for my life. A few months later, I was in the unlucky 1% that recurred. Once again, modern medicine had failed to cure me. So, I found myself bathing in my own pee. A medical intuitive used her pendulum to prescribe urine baths as one set of a larger series of detoxifying and nutritive baths for the tumors now colonizing my bony, ribbed chest. My former roommate, an acupuncturist in Santa Cruz, had been after me for years to drink my own urine, like the people in China do. But that didn't make sense to me. Soaking in my own pee did. Once again, I found myself in the cold porcelain tub with the space heater warming my exposed skin as I alternately lifted chilled knees and chilled torso from the smelly, tepid water. Having failed to prevent cancer recurrence, I took my healing in my own hands. The medical intuitive prescribed the baths, but I did them on my own. In another alchemical act, I ground my own cancerous tumor into a homeopathic remedy and took it for 2 years to help my body recognize and respond to the cancer that tried to evade detection and death. After 23 years with active advanced breast cancer, I've outlived my prognosis by over 20 years. Cancer has continued its slow progression through my body. I've had over 40 surgical procedures and over 800 intravenous infusions. I'm still walking around in spite of missing many organs and carrying hundreds of growths that can't be removed. My left lung barely functions and my liver is dotted with tumors. I'm often asked for my survival secrets. Casual questioners conclude, it must be my attitude. The religious attribute it to God's will. Life-threatened cancer patients want a formula, a quick fix, few-step recipe for success that I just can't give. Was it the urine baths? Which dietary change when? The mistletoe-based Iscador that saved me when chemotherapy failed 18 years ago? Going to grief rituals? Resolving medical PTSD, the many years I've served ill and dying people, love. Since I've lost too many bodily organs and functions to be physically whole, I've focused on other ways of being whole, including what I call earning my death. Nothing suicidal, morose, or depressive about it. Just a realistic knowledge that I can be whole in spirit, if not in body. I chose to fall into life. I chose to fall into community by serving others with cancer and my rare genetic disorder. For 14 years, I've run the acor.org online support group for people with Peutz-Jeghers syndrome, studying, writing, speaking, and blogging about our rare genetic disorder. I'm the biggest Peutz-Jeghers syndrome geek in the world. I'm no longer a tribe of one, but an elder in a worldwide tribe of many who share the diagnosis. And I collaborate with scientific researchers and medical professionals interested in our syndrome. At smartpatients.com, I contribute both my life experience and research skills to a wider cancer community. During my long years with breast cancer, I've become a cancer ambassador and a cancer elder. As a cancer ambassador, I've welcomed many to Cancerland, offering orientation, resources, encouragement, and most importantly, a listening ear and a listening heart. As a cancer elder, I've grown in compassion, wisdom, serenity, and wonder. I've proven to be a useful member in many persons living and dying. I've sat at many deathbeds as a volunteer hospital chaplain, a close friend, a daughter, and a human being. I've studied death because I know it is my fate, though I have no idea when nor what needs to happen before I'm released from this diseased body. In preparing for my own death, I chose to lean into loved ones who've supported me in the most extraordinary ways. My beloved doctors are my allies in healing and dying. My friends gather to support me in sickness and in health until death do we part. My death care wishes are known. Hospice at home, a 3-day wake at home, funeral, and cremation. All that's left to do is to continue to live as fully and wholly as I have throughout my lifetime. Life-threatening illness is my lifelong teacher. For as long as I can remember, I've been preparing for death. For as long as I can remember, life calls me back again, healing into this body, this life, these losses, this grief, this change, this mystery, this love, this gratitude, this generosity, this belonging is my path. As my disease continues to progress, death's horizon is always almost close enough to touch, but just beyond my reach. Yet I can look back on my full, rich life and feel grateful for death's ever-present company. Death, you've given me a life worth living.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. You guys, can I get a round of applause for all of our storytellers so far tonight? Amazing. All right, so if you have loved the Story Collider tonight and would like to go to the Story Collider again, I have good news for you. We are going to be back in San Francisco on October 28th as part of the Bay Area Science Festival. Right, Kishore? Kishore is in charge of the Bay Area Science Festival, so take his word for it. We will be there. Oh, round of applause for Kishore. Bet you weren't expecting that tonight. So, are you guys ready for a fifth storyteller? Yeah. All right, our fifth storyteller has been a district manager working with car dealers in Northern California for 35 years, and he's become a patient advocate. Please welcome Ron Halem.
Thank you. That'll work. Good evening. Hi, my name's Ron Halem, and I am stage 4 kidney cancer. Oh, wait a minute. This isn't an AA meeting. Okay, so here it was a little over 2 years ago, February, a few days after my 59th birthday, when I heard those 3 words, "You have cancer." That is one life-changing event. The good news is my urologist that discovered the cancer was able to get me into a very good top university hospital, which happens to be right down the road from here, by the way. I was ever so thankful to him. It's one of those things where most people, they change quite a bit when you hear those words and do different things. Me, I was very scared, of course. I was thinking I was going to die. And after I digested a little bit, I knew I was going to die, just not today. So I soldiered on and met with all the staff at the hospital and started to get the pre-surgery checkouts. Interesting, I've stayed away from hospitals and doctors all my life, and here I was, by myself, getting checked out. I had 2 nurses helping me. One was doing the testing, and the other one was asking questions and writing down answers. The one writing down answers, an attractive young lady, she was asking these questions, and finally she leaned forward and looked at me, and she noticed that I was wearing a motorcycle t-shirt. Well, when I'm not working, I like to be casual, and I usually wear a motorcycle t-shirt, and it's usually one from the Isle of Man. And she looks at me straight in the face, and she goes, "Motorcycles, they're so dangerous." I couldn't resist. I said, "Young lady, maybe you need to look at my medical chart. Now tell me what's dangerous here." She was speechless. She was done. Now the other nurse that had just stuck a needle in my arm, she looked up and she goes, "I ride a motorcycle." Yeah. We both smiled at each other and continued on. That was the beginning of that part of the journey. Luckily, I have some great friends. And it was sort of almost a fight who was going to drive me to the hospital. My buddy Dave from Nevada drove in to do the deed. Surgery, yeah, it was pretty ugly. My tumor was very large. And to add to it, the cancer was going up towards my heart and down towards my liver. So the surgery was intensive. I had 3 separate surgical teams. My surgeon was top-notch. He's one of the best in the country. And he's developed several techniques for dealing with kidney cancer and kidney surgeries. I checked him out on the internet. The guy's phenomenal. He happens to have a great bedside manner as well. Not much of a sense of humor, but that's okay. I worked on that. The support and the care at this particular hospital is just phenomenally great. I can't say enough about how good the experience was. People think I'm crazy because I say, this was a great experience. How can having cancer surgery be a great experience? I don't know. But if I looked aside from the cancer, I met a lot of great people, and they all cared. And they all did the right things to help me. And I was very thankful for that. So I go through the surgery, and I slept through it. 8.5 hours, no big deal. I was asleep. I finally woke up, and I felt like I had just conquered the world. I wanted to jump up and shout. I wanted to scream, "Huzzah, I made it." But I couldn't. I had a tube down my throat. I had lines in both arms, one down my central line down my neck area, and I had a hose down below, and all kinds of wires because I was in ICU. I was in ICU for 10 days, by the way, and I'm wired crazy. Everything's hooked up, everything's beeping, buzzing, fluids coming in, fluids going out. Interesting, very interesting. The good news, there was a lot of pain, but the good news, I had this button I could push. You push the button, and a few minutes later, a little bit of heaven. The pain went on for several days. The room I was in was really phenomenal. It was a great room. It had this big, giant picture window overlooking these beautiful gardens. And every day people would come and they'd eat their lunch or just take a rest break and admire the beautiful scenery around the hospital entrance. It was great. So day one, you know, I'm not feeling great, but I'm just happy to be alive. And then I get this feeling in the afternoon. And I ring for the nurse, and I go, I need to go. And she looks at me, she says, okay, wait a minute. And she comes back with every hospital patient's favorite device, the bedpan. Okay, I don't know how this is going to work. She stuffs it underneath me, and I squeal in a little bit of pain because it hurts to move. And I try to ask her to leave the room. I said, you don't need to hear this, and you certainly don't need the aroma that's going to happen any minute here. And she looked at me, she shook her head no, and she goes, let her rip. Okay. Well, the good news is it was only gas, lots of it. And she applauded. Really, it's a body function, what can I say? Okay, gone with the bedpan. I'm moving on, you know, time's flying by. My buddy had come in to visit me. I had friends that came to visit me. My boss came to visit me. That was kind of interesting. And so I made it through the day. You know, the breathing tube got removed. They said, oh, this is going to hurt. And then your throat's going to be sore afterwards. Nothing to it. Didn't feel a thing. Pretty simple. I could talk again. Awesome. Everything's going pretty good. Still wasn't able to eat. All these wires and everything. Day 2, midday. Then it was, okay, I was sure I had to go. I push the button. The nurse comes in and I say, it's time, I gotta go, and I'm not using a bedpan. Get me up. And she looks at me, shakes her head, says, okay, hold on. She comes back in with 4 other people, 2 big, strong guys, and 1 nurse pushing this little portable commode. Okay, that's a good compromise. Well, after such a major surgery, you don't really know if you can stand. Your legs feel rubbery, not to mention the fact they're blown up the size of big, giant balloons. These 2 guys helped lift me up. I could stand. Awesome. And I start to shuffle. And they go, wait a minute. Oh, yeah. Wires, tubes, all of the above. And they start shuffling everything over. Okay, I'm walking over to this little portable commode. Hospital gown. Don't you love them? Well, they got the wires going through the gown. So the one nurse picks it on up kind of over my shoulders. And I, you know, kind of shuffle down and sit down on this little commode. And, you know, success. And they applaud. And they look at what was in this commode when I was done, and they're trying to figure out how big it is. It's the size of 2 bricks. I mean, you know, it's huge. And I stand up, and it's kind of embarrassing. A nurse has to wipe your backside because you can't do anything with all these tubes and everything in your arms. And the gown comes down, and I shuffle over to the bed, and I sit down, and I start to laugh. Now, I thought these people thought I was crazy. And they go, what's so funny? I said, you have to laugh when you just mooned 100 people having their lunch. I had to tell that story because I love it. Anyways, needless to say, on the 10th day, my kidney, which was not happy with the procedure they did, decided to wake up, and my numbers are coming into proper alignment. I got moved to a regular room. Everything was going good. Day 12, I got to go home. Yay! There's no place like home, I gotta tell you. I really am thankful for my surgical team. My surgeon came and visited me every day, and everything went really good. I also got to tell you that there was one doctor, I finally found out who it was, and she was warming up a dialysis machine for me. Luckily, she didn't get to use it. So I got home. I was really, really pleased to be home. My buddy Dave that drove me there Once he got me home, I kicked him out the door so he can go home to his bride. I mean, we were told it was only going to be about 4 days, and here it was almost 2 weeks. So I kicked him out the door, and he went home. The next day, my buddy Peter from Germany showed up, and he took care of me for the next week and a half. Peter's my buddy from Germany. He's great. He made me walk everywhere. He was determined that he was going to help me, and he did. We did a lot of things together, and it was a lot of fun. The journey since then has been really interesting, at least to me. I live each day to the fullest. You get this new perspective when you face the devil and you kick his butt. You have this feeling of power, and you move on. And I look at people differently. You know, people in this room, they're not just blank faces. They're real human beings. People that I never paid much attention to in the past, I listen very carefully to now. Everything matters. You all matter, and I matter. I've taken a new turn of events. Like everybody else, I read up on my cancer. I tried to learn about it. I learned about treatments. I learned about what could happen next. I knew I was one of those high-risk patients for recurrence. Had to be. You know, I was late stage 3 at time of surgery. I had 9 months of clean scans. And then, yeah, the metastasis showed up. I had mets in both lungs, one on my diaphragm, and a couple in my empty kidney bed. Time for treatment. Oral chemotherapy was on line for me. I kept reading about it, and I knew about it, and I knew that for kidney cancer, there's a whole bunch of drugs you can take. Some are better than others in terms of side effects. Didn't matter. I was still fighting. The first drug I took was awesome in terms of fighting the cancer. The side effects were pretty harsh, but it didn't matter as long as it was working. The problem with that particular drug is it's not very liver friendly. And I already have a compromised liver that's an inherited condition that's normally no problem, but it is in cancer patients. And yes, my liver enzymes got out of whack, and I had to take a vacation from the drug, and then we went to a lower dose, and my liver numbers went crazy, and the doctor said, time to quit. But in the meantime, it had shrunk all the tumors at least 50%, and the tumors in the old kidney bed weren't visible in the scans anymore. That drug gave me more time. I was pretty happy overall. Can't complain. On to drug 2. Drug 2, well, it had worse side effects, but it didn't matter as long as it would work. That's my thinking, and I'm sticking to it. However, the fatigue and the diarrhea were so bad, I could no longer work. So in February of this year, it was time. I had to stop working. And 35 years with the same company, a wonderful company, by the way, but it was time. I stopped working. That allowed me to sleep more during the week and have a little extra energy for the few hours that I could go. And then there's my other little time consumer is my love of old motorcycles. I'm called Gold Star Ron. My old motorcycles are BSA Gold Stars. Probably nobody in the room has ever heard of them, but they're my passion, they're my hobby. I would ride my street bike whenever I could, and I've got a racer that I built up a number of years ago, and it's had a very successful racing career. It's got a lot of wins in the U.S. at tracks like Willow Springs, Sears Point. We've done top 4 finishes, second place at Daytona a couple times. Done really well in the States. But that bike was built for the Isle of Man. Bike's been 3 times to the Isle of Man. It got 3 DNFs, do not finishes. The bike is waiting for me on the Isle of Man right now. In 2 weeks, things go well. That's where I'll be, and we're going to race it. One of the things I've been doing in the meantime also, when I mentioned I've been studying up on my cancer, I've also been studying up on all cancers. And I decided that my new career, now that I'm not working, was to try and help others, especially the newbies. because I know what it's like to be a newbie. I was one. You're scared, you're afraid you're going to die, and you don't know which way to turn. And quite often, especially with some of the rarer cancers, they're in the hands of the wrong doctor. They need to see a specialist that knows their kind of cancer. And it's very rewarding when you get someone to the right doctor and their potential results have greatly improved. And through Smart Patients, I can do that, and I can help people. And there's other people here that are within the group that do the same thing. And we all help each other at the same time. It's very rewarding to help someone else. I've always been that way, and that'll never change. Additionally, I've joined a group called AACR, which is the American Association for Cancer Research. And I went to their big conference down in San Diego in April. They estimated there was about 25,000 people in attendance, a huge crowd. Every one of those people trying to find a resolve for cancer. Anybody who thinks that there's not a lot of people trying to work for a solution needs to attend one of those conferences. It was totally amazing. It was way overwhelming. They would have between 5 and 10 sessions going on simultaneously in different rooms. Some are simulcast in other rooms as well. You've got the top researchers and doctors from around the world all telling their tale of their area of research. It was phenomenal. Totally phenomenal, and for anybody that has an interest in cancer research, should attend one of those types of conferences. They're very, very good. Next week, I'll be attending a local kidney cancer conference here nearby, and I know I'm going to get the same type of reaction with the people I meet and see there. And the good news is, my oncologist will be one of the key speakers. I feel real proud of that. There's one thing, my philosophy on life is I'm trying to move forward, I'm trying to be positive, and even before I had cancer, I used to say my cup isn't half empty, it isn't half full, it's overflowing. Well, guess what? It's still overflowing. It hasn't changed one bit. I do have this tether around my body called cancer. I have to get regular scans, I get regular blood work, I get infusions, and next week I'm supposed to get a treatment called CyberKnife. Does not involve a knife. It's a very specialized radiation treatment because I got metastasis in my spine right now, and they think they can take care of them. And as soon as that's done, I'm jumping on an airplane. Life is pretty darn good, isn't it? Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. I think one thing I think is so awesome is how consistently it's shown up in all of these stories, how important Smart Patients and similar organizations have been to all of these people. I think that's so awesome. Can we get a round of applause for Smart Patients? All right, guys, we've got one more story. Our last storyteller tonight is a songwriter, musician from Louisville, Kentucky. She, in addition to her story, she's also going to share some of her music with us tonight. Please welcome Emily Cottle.
Sherman, too. I remember the first time that I noticed a difference. It was after my first cycle of chemotherapy. I was riding in the car with my younger sister, Abby. I had a list of jokes that I was reading to her from a care package that someone had given me. I thought these jokes were hysterical, but Abby does not share my sense of humor. She was turning up the volume on the radio to drown me out. I said, "Wait, one more. What do you call 100 banjos at the bottom of the ocean?" A good start. Abby just shook her head and said, seriously, that isn't even funny."
When she spoke, I realized that the words that she said sounded different. There was a slight change, like I wasn't hearing all of the syllables. The S sounds were missing. S. I asked if she could hear that sound I was making, and she said yes, she heard it, but I didn't. My own sound. I could feel the air passing through my teeth and the rattle of my tongue on the back of my teeth, but I couldn't hear it. At 25 years old, I had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Lingering injuries from a bicycling accident were masking a much more serious problem. A large, rare, aggressive, fast-growing germ cell tumor staged at 3C. Everything changed in my life so quickly, so drastically, that I didn't have any time to prepare. I was diagnosed on a Friday, and 2 days later had surgery on a Sunday. I woke up in post-op with a 13-inch scar down my middle, and if I wanted to get better, chemotherapy had to be my immediate next step. I was holding on to this blind hope that maybe my treatment could fit nicely into my weekly planner after morning sessions at my music therapy internship or before an evening gig. The school year had just begun at the Bluegrass Academy for Autism, where I was a paraprofessional and music group leader. I had big things planned that year for the students, like songwriting to practice communication skills. Chemotherapy was not part of my plan, but cancer did not care about my schedule. My treatment was called BEP. It would require a 5-night stay in the hospital every 3 weeks. It would definitely make my hair fall out. It may also cause pulmonary problems, neuropathy, blindness, other cancers, dry skin, hearing loss. Hearing loss? Oh, that should be the least of your concerns, they said. There's only a 10% chance, and if it happens, it's reversible. Considering that my life depended on it, I agreed that the benefit would outweigh the risk and began treatment. My family swooped in from out of town to take care of me. My mom never left my side. The walls of my hospital room were covered in cards from students and neighbors and even from strangers. My friends didn't allow me to sulk. They came to visit with guitars and books and Nerf dart guns, and we played and laughed and sang, and that was good because I wasn't ready to stare into the face of this monster. When my hair began to fall out, I called my little sister crying. And a few hours later, she showed up in my hospital room with a part of her head shaved and said, "See, it's not so bad." At home, I would try to practice violin, but I was losing perception of those high-frequency overtones, which are necessary for tuning. So I found myself sitting at the piano. That's where I wrote this song called Shiver. I recorded a video of it and posted it on the internet so that my friends and family far away could see that I was in good spirits. I shiver, I shake in the wake of the terrible news. A hospital bed under my head, and I don't have any more timeouts for wasting on you. You cruel disease. What a tragedy, they whisper. You can gather around me, but I ain't dying yet. 4 months pass. 2011 was in the history books, and I was in remission. You know, I don't remember crying when they told me that it was cancer. But when my audiologist did a full hearing assessment and said that my hearing loss was permanent, I just sobbed. My ears were driving me nuts. Tinnitus was ringing around the clock now. Sometimes it sounded like a tonal cluster. The dissonance was so irritating. And occasionally, just one tone would sound in one ear or the other. And it would be so loud and so piercing like a siren that all I could do was stop everything and wait for it to fade. Whee! I kept playing in spite of this. I joined a roots band called Blunt Honey. They played the kind of music that felt like home to me. I went back to work as well, but my weakened immune system was no match for the physical demand of working with children, and it showed. 8 months into remission, a phone call confirmed that my cancer had relapsed. My liver was now involved. My best shot this time would be a bone marrow transplant. It would require 12 months of recovery and would definitely make my hearing impairment worse. Now here's the game changer. I was offered a supreme opportunity to retreat from the world while I went through treatment and recovery. So I packed up my life in Louisville, gave up my job, put my internship on hold, and moved 200 miles away to the family farm in eastern Kentucky. Treatment did not go as planned. There were several unforeseen complications, liver failure and then kidney failure, which caused my body to swell with 40 pounds of fluid. The high-dose chemo was so devastating to my ears that people had to get in my face and yell for me to hear their words. But soon it didn't matter how loudly they yelled because everything began to get very fuzzy. I didn't understand speech anymore. I didn't recognize anyone, not my favorite nurses, not even my friend Jonathan, who sat at my bedside and played guitar and sang to me for hours. I even forgot my own name. I was having a mild hemorrhagic stroke. My transplant was terminated early. My case was considered unsuccessful. Scans were still showing spots. It was still in there. Dr. Metzinger said we could try a second look surgery, so we did. No one was prepared for the results. It was the best possible news. Those spots around my liver, they were inviolable. It turns out that my unsuccessful transplant might have been successful after all. It was over, it seemed I could go home. So I returned to the resort and rest home, that's what we call my grandparents' house, and dropped off the map for a while. For a year, I didn't have a cell phone, I didn't set an alarm clock, there were no expectations, just unconditional love, a soft bed, and my grandma's chicken and dumplings. For several months, I was too weak even to open a bottle of water, so practicing was totally out of the question. As I began to get stronger, I started talking to other people about my hearing loss, and I gathered so much strength and encouragement from their stories. My friend, a professional drummer, was deaf in one ear. A cousin has been wearing hearing aids his entire life, and I never knew. A neighbor has been dealing with tinnitus after a life working in a factory with loud machinery. I was not alone, but I still felt sorry for myself, and so I decided that I was going to quit music. I declared my plan to my family, and my grandpa, who was 81 and sharper than a tack, said, "My girl, you must never quit." I knew that he was right, and I also knew that if I quit, I had to give up this instrument. You see, this fiddle has a story of its own. It was made by a man named Kleinert from Indiana in the year I was born, 1986. There's a snake rattler in the body to keep the devil out. Mr. Kleinert gave this fiddle to his student Jeff, and several years later, I was a student of Jeff's. One day in a lesson, Jeff said, "I've got this fiddle sitting in my attic. It needs to be played. Why don't you take it and play it, and you keep it as long as you're playing it?" So I've been playing it for 10 years, through music school, in rock bands, all across the country. It's even been played at Carnegie Hall. When I called my old teacher to tell him that I was bringing back the Kleinert fiddle, he said, "You quit?" And I said, "This instrument deserves a trip to the Grand Ole Opry, and I can't take it there." Jeff said, "Remember what I told you. You keep it as long as you're playing it." When we hung up, I unpacked this instrument, I rosined up my bow, and I played through one of my favorite old tunes. I couldn't even remember the rest of the tune, and my muscle memory was shot, but I tried to play another one. I was out of tune, but still, I tried to play another one. I couldn't ever imagine enjoying music the same way that I used to, but still something deep inside was saying, don't stop playing. So I set some goals. Practice for 20 minutes a day, every day. I set a timer and stood up and played long, slow bow strokes, and if I got to 20 minutes, I was done for the day. The highest octave sounded like a cat scratching on a chalkboard, but I played through it, and I came back to it anyway. Every day, I played it anyway. That was a year ago. Today, I'm wearing hearing aids, and I have a digital tuner clipped to my scroll so that I can see when the notes are out of tune, which is most of the time. I've had no evidence of disease now for 16 months. I miss the sound of rain. I miss that signature whistling melody when the Andy Griffith Show comes on. I may always have to wear hearing aids. I may never regain feeling in my feet or be able to see myself in the face of my child. But as long as I'm here, as long as the sun comes up and I can hold a fiddle in my hands, I'm going to keep playing.
Wow. Whew. Well, that's our show, you guys. Before we go, I want to say a few thank yous real quick. I want to thank Chris and Barrett over here on tech. I want to thank everyone from Smart Patients for raising the money for the show and bringing everyone out here. I want to thank, most importantly, all of the storytellers tonight. Can I please just get a round of applause for all of these storytellers? So grateful that they shared such personal stories with us, and they were such a pleasure to work with the whole time. So thanks so much, you guys, and thanks to everybody for coming out tonight.